picture of Willem Leonhardt Sr. with his son dangling on his knee, 1908. So, and that's Mona about the time that she met Willem, about the time that she sailed. So here they are on board a ship going from New York to Hamburg. Down here in the right-hand corner, you can see Mona facing the camera and Willem. I don't know who these, it's like photobombing, what do they call that? Photobombing piece, somebody jumping in on your picture. But it gives you an idea of the quality that they were enjoying, the luxury. You know, they weren't traveling steerage, they had cabins. They were doing quite well. So off they sailed. Now there was some concern on the part of the family that she didn't know what she was getting herself into. You know, sure, she'd gone to New York and lived in Boston, but she was raised in that kind of monoculture. Did she really understand what she was going to face when she went over there? She, being the optimist that she was open to just about anything. These are Willem's parents, Victoire Weerwex. She was actually Belgian, and his father, looking a little older than he looked in the last photograph. This was taken in the garden of their home. They had a huge estate. It still exists. A huge estate that had greenhouses and orchards and livestock and market gardens. And it was, I mean, they did quite well for themselves. And this is the house. And yes, that is a thatched roof. So this is what it looked like when Mona first met the family. And of course, when she got there, one had to have one's own maid, and the family provided her with one to help her dress, even though she'd been doing it all her life. And she was bowled over by this. She was entertained, but she was also thrilled, you know, that I got my own maid. And she moved in with his parents, which was the respectable thing to do, even though they were in their 30s. So it was a lovely house, and actually in this back garden, this area here, is where they had the wedding reception after they were married, so keep that in mind. And that, I took that picture, that's what it looked like when I was there in 2001. As you can see, it has not changed substantially. It's a beautiful, beautiful house. So here we are, September 3rd, 1938. Mona, sorry, that should be 1937, what am I saying? Got that date wrong. This was taken at the house. His mother said, stop and pose for a picture. You know, before you go off to the town hall, two of you are going to come back as different people. As you can see, Willem wasn't terribly impressed. Mona's trying to humor him before they got into his green Jag to head to the town hall. So this was still photographed. There's actually movie footage shot of this whole sequence, and I love it because as they're pulling out, there are people, you know, standing on the side. It's like this wave, sorry, not that one, this wave. And they went to the town hall, where you can see very quiet, very staid. Everybody's sitting like you're in an elevator with chairs, looking at the front. These two people here, this is Mary Parsons, married to Ross Parsons, so that's Mona's brother. There was a postcard that Willem wrote to Norval Parsons saying, I'm sorry you're not feeling well, I'll take good care of her. So whatever health crisis he was experiencing prevented him from going to the wedding to officially give his daughter away. So Ross was there for that role. And there's Victoire and Willem Sr. And behind Willem Sr. is a friend of theirs, Pancho Rodewijk, who would actually go missing in Italy, fascist Italy during the war, or died suddenly, sorry, under mysterious circumstances. And this young fellow here, the blonde-haired fellow, is Gustav Leonhardt. If you're at all interested in classical music, there's actually the Leonhardt, I think it's trio, string trio. I met him he was part of the research as well. Lives in a beautiful canal house with its own ballroom. I mean, sometimes you think, you only see this stuff in movies, right? Where you go in and there's a table at the end and there's his violin, and the table at this end is his wife, who was also a musician, you know, with her violin, and a big floor and a painted ceiling. Just amazing. So, here we are, back at Schoonhoord for the wedding reception. The first health, they toast drinking to their health. Now, this woman in the striped dress and the woman standing beside her, you can't really see the woman in the background. The woman standing beside her is Lee van Oldenburg, who's going to feature in our story. But the woman in the dark, with the dark hair and the striped dress, is a woman by the name of Pam Houtapels, and she's going to feature big time in this story as well. It's rather interesting that those two people, but Pam most prominently, is in the photo of the brand new bride and groom, husband and wife. Because, I might as well tell them now. Because I told you that Willem was divorced. Pam was married to his best friend, Piet Houtapels, who was a physician. And they used to hang out a lot together. And sort of like the tabloid stories we read about the royal family, well, he was such a good friend, it seems that he shared his wife. I don't think it was a threesome. No, let's just get that image out of your head. But I'm not sure when they began to have an affair, but have an affair they did. So that's why I think it's interesting that there she is in the picture. Speaking of photobombing. Cutting the cake. It's a lovely cake. I have no idea what it was made of, but it's quite elaborate. With a glass of champagne, one of Mona's favorite things to drink. Now, they set off on their honeymoon. It was an extended tour. They went into France. There's the Green Jag. And just some photos of the honeymoon trip, Mona on the running board. They're in Portofino, they're in Marseille, they're all over the place. It was just a trip of a lifetime. And I love this one because on the back, there's Mona. They had a picnic by a river in southern France. And you can see that Willem is drinking from a bottle of Chianti. And on the back, Mona has written, I don't know if she's trying to reassure, it's not safe to drink the water. And this photograph actually, when they got back, I guess the the Jag had a few too many miles on it, so he traded it for this chocolate brown Bugatti. The man loved his cars. You can tell by the grin on his face. He didn't look like that in any of his wedding photos. Now, when they got back, they found a piece of land, and they built this modest little home on a huge estate in Laren. It was, as far as I know, it was designed by a man named Dirk Bauer, who, if he had survived the war, I was told by people over there, he probably would have been quite a well-known architect. But you will find out, and I've just given that away, that he did not survive the war. But it's quite lovely. And I want to point out, in this photograph, there's a peak, right? You can see a gable roof peak. That is where the servants' quarters were built, over here on the left in this photo, and of course the other side of looking back is on the right in this. So you can tell that for servants' quarters, they were really quite large, quite airy. During the war, or when war was declared, they began to get involved in what would become known as the resistance. They dismissed their live-in staff, get to them, Greek and Johannes, and of course the two dogs, Knock and Brick. Mona never had any children of her own, and these, I have 6 kids of my own, but my dogs, now that the kids are gone, they're like my children. So I completely understand how much she doted on these, how much she relied on these animals, and how, when her husband left and went into hiding, she refused to go because she wasn't sure who was going to look after these dogs. So, those two staff that were hired when they first moved into Ingleside, they were dismissed in May of 1940, or shortly after Holland was occupied by the Nazis, because they were getting into other activities and they didn't want them to be implicated. They did keep a housekeeper whose name was Beth, but she was a live-out. If she knew what was going on, she, you know, Schultz from Hogan's Heroes, I know nothing, right? So, truly, truly loyal woman. And these are just some lovely shots. I love this kind of, this looks like an American film star with her dogs out on the deck. Yeah. This, apparently up here, this was one of the trips they were going away. So they were living the high life. They were living in style. They had, you know, staff and a chauffeur. Now that was the other thing. When Mona first moved to Holland, she of course didn't speak a word of Dutch. And Willem was quite adamant in the beginning that he didn't want her to learn any Dutch. He didn't want her to butcher the language. Apparently he said to her once, you can't speak. English people cannot learn Dutch or German, any of these languages, because that little thing out of your tongue is too short. So, yeah. And apparently he said to her once, what would you be if you weren't English? And she said, ashamed of myself. So they hired a man by the name of DeBoer, who was the chauffeur. He was the person he spoke fluent English. He did not live in. He lived with his family a short distance away from Ingleside. And by the way, Ingleside is a play on words. Ingels, which is Dutch for English, and Ingleside, so hence the name stuck. But DeBoer was the person who took her wherever she wanted to go. If she wanted to go shopping, he was the one who took her there. And because Mona had such an easy way with other people, there was none of this, sitting in the back, this is my chauffeur. I mean, this is my car, I'm letting you drive it, I'm sitting in the front. And sometimes she drove and he just went along for the ride, because this was a friend, somebody she could talk to and joke with. And as I said, there were concerns from the family over here about how well she would adjust to life, the formality of life. But I guess it wasn't as stuffy as they thought, because Mary Parsons, her sister-in-law, wrote when they stepped into Ingleside, when they arrived for the wedding, Mona was in the upper gallery of the main entrance with one stocking on and the other one in her hand going, hey! Right? So, and Victoire seemed to get a real kick out of this. It was very novel, right? Although Husnav said to me, when she first came in, we thought she was an American film star, because she just said, hi, how you doing? Nothing quiet about Mona, Anyway, so DeBoer was a very good friend, and took her wherever she wanted to go, kept her company